Hey everyone, thanks for joining today's call. We're going to get started shortly. Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Compliance and the Stellar Network. I'm Lauren Thorbjornsen. I'm the Director of Communications and PR at the Stellar Development Foundation, and I'll be your host as we dig a little deeper into understanding both compliance on Stellar and the SDF-Elliptic partnership. A quick overview of what we're going to cover today. We're joined by Candace Kelly, SDF's General Counsel, and she'll provide a brief overview of Stellar, its key features, most notably compliance. She'll also share more about the SDF partnership with Elliptic and the value of combining their services with the existing built-in compliance functionality of the Stellar network for businesses who are on the network and who are looking for compliance tools. We're also excited to have Andrea Ramuño, the VP of Product from Elliptic. He's here to discuss their solutions for crypto asset risk management, specifically for crypto businesses and financial institutions. And then he'll hand it over to Tara Annison, who is the Elliptic Product Owner for Stellar, and she can dig into the integration with Stellar and all the benefits these services provide to Stellar-based businesses who choose to leverage them. We'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A, so feel free to drop questions throughout in the chat box that's in your upper left-hand corner. And we'll be recording this webinar, so we'll make it available online afterwards for those who didn't get a chance to watch it live. So with that, I am excited to hand it over to Candace to get us started.
Thanks, Lauren, and hello, everyone. My name is Candace Kelly, and I'm the General Counsel here at Stellar Development Foundation. I joined in September of last year, and before that, I spent over 17 years as a federal prosecutor with the U.S. Department of Justice, and during that time spent some time back in Maine Justice in Washington, D.C. in policy roles. And then I spent a couple years at Uber before joining SDF. I'm excited to be here today to talk about some of the key features of the Stellar protocol, most notably those that empower Stellar-based businesses with tools to meet their compliance needs, and how we've enhanced those capabilities through our partnership with Elliptic. We recognize that for blockchain-based businesses, being able to assess risk and meet compliance requirements is critical to gaining mainstream adoption. So I'll start with a quick introduction of the foundation. The Stellar Development Foundation is a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 2014 to support the development and growth of the open source Stellar network. Our mission is to create equitable access to the global financial system. As a foundation supporting a decentralized network, you may wonder what our role is. And we see that in three main buckets. One, that we help maintain Stellar's code base. Two, we support the technical and business communities building on the network. And three, we serve as a voice to regulators and institutions. So Stellar Development Foundation and the Stellar Network are two distinct things. So let's take a quick look and talk about the network itself. So Stellar is a decentralized open network that connects the world's financial infrastructure. It's a global public blockchain that's built for interoperability and to further financial access and inclusion. And Stellar has some unique features that make it a powerful, compelling technology to be that infrastructure layer for the global financial system. So let's take a look at the features, a few of the features that power the Stellar network. So I want to talk about speed, cost, asset issuance, and compliance. So speed and cost are pretty self-explanatory. The Stellar network is faster and cheaper than blockchains that rely on mechanisms like proof of work. You don't have to wait for a series of blocks to close, so transactions take 3 to 5 seconds. You don't have to pay miners fees, so the cost for a transaction is a fraction of a cent. But the features I really want to focus on today are asset issuance and compliance. They're part of what really allow businesses on Stellar to build and create compelling products. So asset issuance is the backbone of the Stellar network. It's how Stellar connects the world's currencies, and it's what Stellar was really built for. With just a few lines of code, no smart contracts necessary, anyone can create a digital asset. So typically, regulated entities like financial institutions or money services businesses will issue an asset on Stellar that represents something outside the network, something in the real world like fiat currency, securities, gold, you name it. And of course, that's where the compliance piece comes in. So Stellar has built-in features that enable businesses to perform compliance checks at any point along their asset's lifecycle, from issuance to redemption, and as I'll explain a little bit in a minute, if necessary, in between that issuance and redemption as transactions are made in the network with that asset. So let me explain a little bit more about this compliance functionality. These are the advantages that the Stellar protocol has by design over other protocols. Regulations and compliance aren't new to blockchain. Businesses in this space have to follow existing regulations that apply to the function or the service that they're providing to their users. In the payment space, anti-money laundering and KYC, know your customer, regulations exist to protect against illicit transactions like terrorist financing, fraud, money laundering, in short, any bad actors trying to hide what they're really up to. So for example, if you've created an asset on Stellar and you offer your users a custodial wallet as an on and off ramp to move that asset to and from fiat currency in the real world, Stellar has built-in functionality that makes it easy for your business to perform processes like KYC and AML before accepting those deposits or honoring withdrawals. And these are built in at the protocol level. So again, easy to access, easy to use, and there's no complicated coding required. So another key feature, which I referenced earlier, that offers heightened compliance control is what we call authorization required. With this functionality turned on, the token issuer is able to make sure that KYC or AML or any other checks, depending on the functionality or the service that a particular token is being used for, if you think of securities tokens, for example, that no one can hold or transfer that token without first going through compliance checks. So as opposed to just the earlier technology that I mentioned, doing checks on the on and the off ramp, this is anytime you transfer the token to another party, the issuer has the opportunity to do compliance checks. So with all of this built-in technology, why do businesses need to seek out additional services like Elliptic? So in refuting the ever-present claims that cryptocurrency is the tool of terrorists and criminals, we often speak of the immutable ledger and the public nature of the ledger and how that demonstrates transparency and accountability. The refrain of just look at the ledger, it's all there for the public to see, it goes both ways. So as much as that is a positive attribute of the blockchain technology, policymakers, regulators, and lawmakers all expect businesses to take advantage of this feature in meeting their compliance obligations. So the Stellar protocol provides the built-in functionality to conduct the appropriate compliance checks. The burden of actually performing those checks falls to the businesses building on Stellar. And this is no small feat. With public immutable ledgers, the amount of information available about a prior transaction of a particular address can be quite extensive. On the blockchain, anyone can have multiple wallets. Wallets can have multiple addresses. Transactions can be traced. Addresses can be used on multiple platforms. Wallets can be associated with a particular jurisdiction that may or may not be subject to sanctions. And all of that information can be determined without even knowing who the individual is, not having any personal information about who's behind those wallets or transactions. It's just that the connections that you can see on the network and on the ledger can be very informative in making risk assessments. And compliance teams are expected to analyze all of this in making those risk assessments. So companies like Elliptic have built tools that help detangle that web of publicly available information. Their AML compliance software and forensic and investigative services help to identify suspicious wallets and transactions so businesses can have the benefit of this information to assess risk. So recognizing the Stellar ecosystem's need for access to these enhanced tools, we partnered with Elliptic and integrated their compliance tools with the Stellar network for Lumens. And this integration, while it is currently for Lumens, it allows for rapid integration with their platform of other Stellar-based assets. So businesses that want to add these tools for other assets will benefit from this integration that Elliptic and SDF has already performed. And Elliptic is a preferred partner. They're the first and their only service of this kind that's integrated with the network. Now, use of their service is certainly not mandatory. After all, as I mentioned a few times, Stellar is an open source network. And so it is simply another tool that businesses can take advantage of to manage risk if they choose to use it. For the industry to mature and overcome the skepticism that regulators and lawmakers have developed, we all need to address the risk of bad actors taking advantage of the attributes of blockchain technology that help them to hide their illicit activity. The public ledger gives us that ability, but businesses need tools like those that Elliptic has developed to do that effectively and efficiently. So these compliance tools, we believe, are really critical to helping to pave the way to greater adoption of blockchain technology and digital currencies like CBDCs and stablecoins. At this point, I'll turn it over to Andrea to share more about Elliptic services and what they bring to the Stellar network.
Thank you. Thank you, Candace. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. I'm Andrea Morino. I'm Vice President for Products at Elliptic, which means that I'm responsible for the short-term execution of our projects, but also the long-term strategy for our product offering across all the offerings within Elliptic. I'm extremely glad to be here today because I have been close to this partnership with Stellar since the very beginning. So it's really nice to see that we went through this and finally we launched, we can elaborate on the partnership. So extremely nice. I can elaborate a little bit more about Elliptic, and for the one of you that don't know enough about our company and what services we provide. So I'll try to explain a bit where we come from, what we do, and then eventually dig a bit more what that means in practical terms for you and what are the benefits of this partnership. At Elliptic, what we stand for is that we provide crypto assets risk information to our customers. This means that we understand the blockchain industry, we understand the technology that is behind a blockchain, we can analyze the data and derive insights. And then our customer can use those insights to manage risk associated to crypto, and therefore making sure that they can provide trusted and safe services to their own customers. When I say about our customers, I'm talking about the crypto businesses. So we focus on helping exchanges, custodians, token issuers, brokers, or even financial institutions that are now looking into the crypto space and trying to understand how we can play into that space. Unlike some other organizations into our field, we do not focus on law enforcement, but 100% of our development resources and roadmap is focused on building solutions that help our crypto businesses or our customer to have a safe use of the services, provide safe use, and prevent illicit activity within the crypto space. And this is because our mission is very much aligned with the Stellar one, which is we believe in an open and financial system powered by crypto assets, and we're here to help it to make it happen by providing safe services. If you can go to the next slide, Lauren, I can give you a little bit more, thank you very much. I can give you a little more information about the services we provide. So we have been the first organization in the industry to provide risk scoring for crypto assets. The concept of risk scoring is something that was already mainstream into the traditional financial sector. But when the company was built back in 2013, we've been the first one to derive a way to use crypto risk scoring within the crypto space. This is the backbone of what we do. So risk scoring is embedding all the software and tools that we provide. And across the Elliptic suite, what is more relevant for this partnership is the navigator tool, which is a transaction screening tool, and the lens tool, which is a wallet screening tool. But clearly, you cannot really provide meaningful risk scoring if you don't have a good data set that you can score, you can derive the scoring from. So in the industry, we're typically considered the provider of the best and more accurate data set. This means that we have an in-house team of data researchers and data scientists, and we analyze the blockchain across a number of assets, use our proprietary algorithm methodology to derive insights, and also have a very high bar for quality before we add any insights into our own database. But I care to say this is nothing to do with like surveillance, etc. Because as I said before, our job is to help crypto businesses like exchanges and so forth to provide safe service and therefore prevent illicit use of crypto. So we don't go to providing any PII information or that kind of stuff. And also another important point about how we manage data. We take a very strict and professional view about how we manage our customers' data. So when an exchange, for example, screens transaction with us on Checker Wallet, we don't use those information to enrich our database. We do not resell those data that we use. All the data are actually based on our own analysis. By being so professional in the way that managing data from our customers as well, we have earned the trust of more than 100 crypto businesses around the globe. As I said, there are like exchanges, custodians, token issuers, etc. And they are both small and large, which means that we can help the small ones to get started with tools that help them to be compliant, but also we can help the most sophisticated one, the one that got more stringent requirements. And by focusing all our efforts in helping crypto businesses, then we can fulfill the requirements of the most sophisticated customers. Also, we're backed by very large financial institutions, which is a good sign for us that the work we're doing on the compliance space is actually going in the right direction and is in line with the best practices also being seen in the traditional financial sector. All of this help us to build a global company. So we are now, we have offices in 4 different locations, so London, New York, Singapore, and Tokyo, which means that we have on-field support and across all those locations that can give us, we can enable support to customers across clearly different time zones and different languages, and they help us to stay closer to the customer needs. as I said, I'm very excited about this partnership because when you do a partnership with a company, you have to look at the value that you share. You have to look at the mission, whether we're going in the right direction. And as Candace mentioned before, also the mission of the Stella Foundation is pretty much in line with the Elliptic one. So we're all for enabling technology, using technology to enable an open financial system. And clearly the Stella Foundation comes from the angle of building this fantastic network, while we come from the angle of building the tools that enable the network, or who uses the network, and the businesses to provide the safe services. And more in practical terms, just to give you a highlight, this means that by supporting the Stella blockchain, we can now screen Lumen's transactions within our navigator tool, or Lumen's wallet with our Lens tools. But this is even more than that, because by having done the groundwork in terms of technology and data, we have now the foundation ready for any extra assets that can be built on top of the Stella blockchain. So it's easy for us to add extra support for extra assets, and therefore we can, well, in essence, enabling the Stella Foundation and the businesses that are working and building solution on the Stella network to grow and unlock the power. I leave it now to my colleague, Annison, that is going to give you a bit more information about the benefits and also specifics about our products. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Annison. I'm a product owner here at Elliptic, and I've been working with our engineering team to deliver this piece of integration with the Stella blockchain. As Andrea mentioned, we see a number of benefits that this partnership could bring to businesses who are operating with the Stella blockchain. So I just want to run through a few of those today. The first one that we see is around safety. So through this work that we've done, you'll be able to screen transactions and accounts from the Stella blockchain and receive risk and blockchain information about them, as Andrea was saying. This can obviously help you avoid transacting or interacting with funds associated with illicit activities. So whether that's sanctioned entities or individuals, CSA material, terrorist financing, it gives you the visibility about who your counterparty is and can help you protect from engaging with illicit actors. But again, as Andrea said, I want to stress that this isn't PII. We're not trying to identify individuals here, the exception being if they're sanctioned. We're looking for businesses, entities being able to tell you whether it's an exchange or a custodian or linked to a fraud event, all of these different categorizations. This links in very nicely with compliance. So this is something Candace talked about, and it allows you to be compliant with AML, counter-terrorist financing, other financial regulations and obligations in order to run your business safely. So you can create risk-based processes for crypto transaction and use the information that's provided with Elliptic as part of your wider compliance program and regulatory obligations. This, obviously, we've seen regulatory coverage increase for crypto assets globally. We've seen some regulators mandate that you must have blockchain monitoring for an asset to be launched. So we see compliance as being really key within the crypto industry, and that's why our mission is really helping to make sure that cryptocurrencies can be used safely, and certainly building in with those regulations. And then growth, which Andrea just touched on. So as well as being able to meet your regulatory obligations, we're hoping that this means that the use of Stella Lumens can be expanded to other jurisdictions, other services, all building into that compliance framework. But our support for Lumens really is only the beginning on the Stella blockchain. By doing that foundational work and being linked in with the Stella blockchain, we're soon going to be able to support other assets on the Stella blockchain. So if you are an asset issuer or use other assets on the Stella blockchain, and that's something we're really keen to support and make sure that we can help with that growth. So how does this then work in practice? Well, Andrea touched on two of the products that we have within the Elliptic suite. We run, I suppose, at a technical level, we run a Stella node and use the publicly available blockchain data with our proprietary data set. So that's what Andrea spoke about. We have a team in-house. We use lots of machine learning, data collection, looking at the clear net, the deep web, the dark web, collect all that really valuable data about who the entities are that are transacting on the blockchain. And this powers our Elliptic products, which are specific to different use cases. So when we look at Navigator, firstly, this is our transaction screening tool. So this allows you to put through a transaction hash and receive risk and blockchain information. Through this, you can use that information to conduct off-chain activity. Maybe you need to file a suspicious activity report if it's engaging with someone nefarious, and really do the core of your business compliance program. Elliptic Lens is our wallet screening tool. So this allows you to check a wallet or an account before you transact with them, understand their wider activity within the network, and understand that risk of who you're dealing with. This is particularly important for sanctions compliance, for instance, to make sure that you're not looking to interact with an entity which has links to or is a sanctioned individual or entity. So using these products can enable you to be compliant, whether it's global or regional jurisdictional regulations and compliance obligations, and ensure that you can safely do business with Stellar Lumens, as well as in the future other assets on the Stellar blockchain. So hopefully that's given a little bit of background into the work that we've done at Elliptic to integrate with the Stellar blockchain and some of the products that you'll now be able to use to screen transactions and accounts on the Stellar blockchain for risk and blockchain information. I'll now hand over to Lauren for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Tara. So now it is time for Q&A. You guys can feel free to drop questions up into the Q&A box that is in the left-hand corner, and we will kick off with a few I think that have already come in. I think the first one here would be for Andrea. On the subject of compliance, are you implementing any products specific to the travel rule or working with any partners to improve upon this?
That's a good question, also because we've been following quite tightly the evolution of these requirements from the FATF. So we understand, we analyze, and we saw that clearly there was not quite a consensus yet in the industry about what was the right application of the travel resolution, but we monitor it. And I can say that we're now discussing and having a discussion with a provider of travel solutions, and we'll be able to disclose hopefully in the next few weeks. But this will enable us to provide additional functionalities to whoever uses the Elliptic software. So bear with us until we can discuss that further more openly.
Thank you. I think the next question is probably for Tara here. This is, what is the protocol level mechanism that enables the integration of Elliptic? And can other compliance service providers make use of that?
So we run a Stellar node on the blockchain. This is the same node that many of you may be running if you're a service that plugs directly into the Stellar blockchain. What we then do is we have many downstream processes that bring this data within our proprietary data set to be able to add what we call assertions. So this is entity level information. We have a number of systems that support this, one which we recently released information about, which is our new real-time system. So this looks at getting the blockchain data from our daemon through the ETL process with our proprietary data and being able to have this searchable within our products in real-time manner. So this is something which we're looking to roll out to all of the assets we support here at Elliptic and make sure that you can get data about whether it's transactions or addresses in real time. In line with that, we also announced quite recently a new predictive feature, which makes use of information within the mempool, as well as recently confirmed blocks. So we're doing a lot of work here to make sure that our services are as quick as possible, obviously, as Andrea said, as well as accurate as possible. We have a very high quality data set. We've also been around for around 6 years. So our data is really important to us and the level of data we've collected. It's not inconceivable that other providers may look to integrate with the Stellar blockchain. It's not something which is technically impossible, but we are hoping that the way that we've built this service means that you'll have a quicker access to data and more accurate data than some of the other providers may be able to provide.
Thanks, Tara. So this one might be for both Candace and Andrea. I'll let you guys decide. If someone in the Stellar ecosystem identifies a fraudulent actor, how can they, what's the process and how can they report that to either Elliptic or Stellar?
Do you want me to? I can start asking and answering this one. So, as I said, typically when we work with crypto businesses, we don't reuse data that they submit into our tool unless they really wanted to. And exactly in these cases where there are many cases where businesses see the opportunity to share information, because by doing that, then other organizations as well will benefit from it. In this case, we're clearly very open to gather data, and we can provide you with, let's say, tools and forms that you can use to submit data to us, which will then through a process internally to data validation before they get into our tool and database. I've been discussing with Cadence. I know that this is also something that is quite actual, so we can, I think I can keep in touch with the Stellar Foundation and provide a mechanism of actually practically do it through the foundation.
Yes, we'll work together on that. And I think, of course, as I mentioned, I was a federal prosecutor. So there are two different ways to make sure that bad actors and addresses that have suspicious activity or fraudulent activity on them are handled. And I know that sometimes folks don't want to go to law enforcement, but obviously there are ways to report that to law enforcement. But having Elliptic and having them be able to integrate that information and analyze it to flag it in their database is another option that would allow folks to not go down the law enforcement route if there's some reason that they feel. Typically, if you're a victim, it's a good idea to alert law enforcement both for your own protection and also to hopefully make sure that no one else is victimized by the same scheme. So we would certainly be able to point folks in those both to the Elliptic reporting mechanism and also to report to law enforcement.
Thanks, Candace. I think this next one might also be for you. What role does compliance play in greater adoption of this technology?
I think that compliance is critical to greater adoption. As we all know, the introduction of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology into the world years ago was not necessarily coupled with the concept of compliance. And I think that as we engage with regulators in our role here at SDF, it's very clear that those who really understand the technology can see the benefits and how it can help society, how it can help what our mission is financial inclusion. But without compliance, I think that there's just, when you're dealing with financial instruments and value, compliance is critical. And as I mentioned, I think that the public and open nature of the blockchain creates a lot of information and a lot of burden on businesses to be able to assess the risk, and more so, I think, than even the traditional financial system, where there's not as much information that's public even before you connect that with an individual. So I think that it is critical to mainstream adoption of blockchain technology that the industry can demonstrate that we care about compliance, and not only do we care about it, but we can execute on it.
Thank you, Candace. We have a question here that Andrea, I think maybe you can take on, is how would people learn more about your products and maybe the corresponding price tag that it goes with them?
Well, I guess the best thing is to get in touch. Get in touch, I mean, we go to the websites and we can definitely follow through and provide you with an overview also how the services work. Because today we discussed specifically, two products of our Elliptic suite, which is Navigator and Lens. But we have other products as well and services that we provide to crypto businesses, because at the end of the day, each business is slightly different from one to another. And also, each one of those products has got capability that can be required in some jurisdiction and not required in other jurisdictions. Make an example. There are opportunity to have dashboards that are tweaked and specifically tailored for reporting in a specific country, which is clearly not useful for another country as well. So I can give you the breadth and the view, and also explain that, as I said before, we typically address and help businesses from across a very broad range of categories, from very small ones, the one are just starting up, and they just have to put together a compliance program. So they need something simple to get started. Through the large organization, when they have quite a team of compliance officers with a lot of experience, and they have a lot of tools, and we plug into those tools and we can help with the automation. So there is quite a variance. We're super happy to give you an overview, and please contact us at our website and our forum. We're very happy to follow that up. Or I don't know if you also do through the Stellar Developer Foundation, or we can get the contact through that. But it's very happy to do that.
Thank you. So I think this next question is for Tara. In the case of, let's say, BTC, is there a minimum block confirmation count you require before real-time processing of a transaction to determine if the transaction may be tainted? And then how does this translate to the speed of bad actor detection with Stellar? And is it immediate due to Stellar's finality?
So in the case of Bitcoin specifically, which has been asked about, which is another asset we support in Elliptic, there's no minimum block confirmation required before you can screen a transaction within the Elliptic tools, within Elliptic Navigator specifically. This is, as I mentioned before, related to a recently released feature called Predictive, where we can take into account both mempool and at-the-tip blocks. We're currently working on moving all of our assets over to our real-time infrastructure. Stellar is part of that plan. But throughout the day, the week, we're always adding new data to our data set. We have manual data collection as well as machine learning and various different data techniques to add new data. So as we collect data, it's added to our data set. This means that we're constantly evolving and adding entity level information about Stellar transactions, about Bitcoin transactions, ETH transactions. So this means that you're able to receive bad actor, as well as maybe if it's an exchange, information about a transaction or address as soon as we can get it into our tools.
Thank you so much. So this might be one of our last questions, unless we get any more coming into the Q&A. But this one I think is for you, Candace. How does the SDF, if at all, action any of the risk information that comes in from Elliptic? And are there scenarios, where SDF would consider something risk-worthy or not?
So that's a great question. I think that it goes back to the basics, which is that Stellar is an open, decentralized network. And so Stellar is not controlling the network. And so we are not in a position, if there were a wallet or something that appears to be risky or engaged in illicit activity, that's something that the businesses building on Stellar need to be aware of and need to take into account as they assess their risk and whether or not they're going to engage with transactions with that account or otherwise. So that is exactly why we have partnered with Elliptic and created this integration. And so the businesses building on Stellar are able to use Elliptic's tools and engage with them to engage in their own compliance risk assessments and make those decisions on their own.
Thank you so much. So I think that brings our webinar to a close. Thank you so much to Elliptic for joining us today, and Candace as well. We will have this recording up online shortly for anyone who wants to rewatch it. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you.